My name is Emma, and at my age, I never thought I'd be standing at the center of a battle over something so deeply personal. But while Laura and Jake might think they've cornered me, convinced that I'll fold under pressure, that I'll hand over the last tangible piece of my mother without a fight, they have no idea who they're dealing with. I'm not weak. I'm not naive, and I sure as hell am not about to let them take what's mine. I should have known something was off the moment Laura texted me out of nowhere. Hey, let's grab coffee sometime this week. Just us girls. I have something special to ask you. That alone was suspicious. Laura and I had never been close. She was my brother Jake's fiancée. Charming in that perfectly polished way, always smiling just a little too wide. The kind of woman who curated her personality like an Instagram feed. Friendly, yes, but not the kind of person who reached out just for small talk. I stared at the message for a solid minute before responding. Sure, let me know when you're free. That was my first mistake. We met at a trendy cafe downtown, the kind of place with overpriced lattes and minimalist decor, where everything looked like it belonged in a Pinterest post. Laura was already seated when I arrived, her blonde hair curled to perfection, nails immaculate as she scrolled through her phone. When she spotted me, she beamed. "Emma, so glad you could make it." She acted like we were best friends. Like we'd done this a dozen times before. I forced a polite smile, sliding into the chair across from her. "Yeah, of course. What's up?" We ordered drinks. She got some ridiculous oat milk concoction. I stuck with my usual black coffee. Then, for the next 15 minutes, I listened as she gushed about wedding plans, the venue, the floral arrangements, the cake tasting she and Jake had attended last weekend. I nodded in the right places, pretending to care, waiting for the real reason she'd invited me here, and then, just as I lifted my cup for another sip, she dropped the bomb. "So, I have a huge favor to ask." I raised an eyebrow. "Okay, I want to wear your mom's wedding dress." I nearly choked. I set my cup down, blinking at her. Sure, I had misheard. "What?" "Your mom's dress," she repeated, slower this time, as if I were a child who just needed things explained properly. "I know she gave it to you, but I thought, since I never got to meet her and I'm about to become part of the family, it would be such a beautiful way to honor her." My body went cold. I couldn't speak for a second, the weight of her words pressing down on me. That dress wasn't just fabric and lace. It was my mother. It was her memory, her legacy, the last piece of her I had left. I could still remember the day she gave it to me, her hands frail but warm as she whispered, "This is yours, sweetheart. Whether you wear it, keep it, or turn it into something new, it belongs to you." And now, Laura, the woman my mother had never even met, wanted to slip into it like it was just some prop for her perfect wedding aesthetic. "Laura, I don't think I can do that." I kept my voice steady, controlled, but inside something twisted. Her smile faltered, but only for a second. Then she let out a light laugh, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Oh, come on, Emma. It's just sitting in your closet, right? This way it actually gets used. And besides, it's not like you're engaged or anything." There it was, that edge in her voice, the subtle jab hidden beneath her honeyed words. My grip on my coffee tightened. "That's not the point," I said slowly, carefully. "My mom gave it to me. It's personal." Her smile vanished. "Personal?" she repeated, like I had just said something ridiculous. "Emma, your mom would have wanted this. She'd want to include me in the family. You're just being selfish." Selfish! That word sliced through me, sharp and deliberate. A week ago, I might have hesitated. A month ago, I might have tried to explain myself, to soften the rejection. But now, sitting across from Laura, watching how quickly her mask cracked, I realized something. This wasn't about my mother. This wasn't about honoring anyone. This was about Laura wanting something she couldn't have. "No." I said it flatly, leaving no room for negotiation. She blinked as if the concept of being denied something was completely foreign to her. Then her lips pressed into a thin line. "Wow," she said, voice dripping with manufactured disappointment. "I didn't expect you to be so cold." I didn't respond. Silence stretched between us, thick and charged. She fidgeted with her napkin, her irritation barely concealed beneath her carefully composed expression. Then, with a dramatic sigh, she picked up her purse and stood. I really thought you'd understand, she murmured, shaking her head. Jake's going to be so disappointed. And there it was, the real threat. This wasn't over. As she walked out of the cafe, leaving her half-finished latte behind, I knew that this was just the beginning. I should have known Laura wouldn't take no for an answer. The moment she walked out of that cafe, feigning disappointment like I had just kicked a puppy, I felt it in my bones. This wasn't over. No, this was just the beginning. But even then, I hadn't expected what came next. I hadn't expected her and Jake to go after everything, not just the dress. Not just some sentimental wedding requests. They wanted it all. It started subtly, like a slow-moving poison. A few days after our coffee meeting, my aunt called me out of nowhere. "Emma, sweetheart, I've been meaning to talk to you," she began, her voice laced with that overly sympathetic tone that people use when they're about to lecture you. "I heard from Jake that there's, some tension between you and Laura about your mother's dress." My stomach twisted. "Did Jake tell you that?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Well, yes, he mentioned it," she admitted. "He just seemed really hurt. He said it's been difficult for him planning this wedding without Mom, and that Laura wanted to do something special to honor her memory." I closed my eyes, exhaled slowly. Here it was. The manipulation, the carefully crafted story. Laura wasn't the villain. No, in their version, I was the cruel, selfish sister, denying her grieving brother a chance to honor our mother. "Aunt Carol, Mom didn't give that dress to Jake," I said evenly. "She gave it to me." "I know, sweetheart, but don't you think she would have wanted the family to share it, to keep it in the family?" "I am family," I said flatly. Silence. A long, uncomfortable pause. "Well," she finally said, "maybe you should just think about the bigger picture, Emma." I ended the call right there, because I suddenly realized this wasn't about the dress anymore. This was about... Laura had seen my refusal, not as a personal boundary, but as a challenge. And if she couldn't manipulate me directly, she'd do it through pressure, through family, through the whispers and gossip that spread like wildfire. She was playing the long game, and I wasn't ready for how far she was willing to go. It escalated quickly. Within the week, I noticed a shift in my family. Conversations became more tense, filled with pointed comments and disapproving glances. At Sunday dinner, my cousin Sarah, who never cared about weddings or family politics, leaned across the table and said, "So, you're really not going to let Laura wear the dress?" My fork clattered against my plate. "Excuse me?" Jake said you were being weird about it, like overly possessive or something. I felt a sharp, simmering rage rise in my chest. "Did he now?" I said, voice tight. Across the table, Jake barely looked up from his plate. The coward couldn't even meet my eyes. But Laura? Oh, Laura smiled. She didn't say a word, just kept that serene, knowing expression as if she were completely uninvolved, as if she hadn't orchestrated this entire conversation. And that's when it hit me. This was deliberate. She wasn't just pushing for the dress anymore. She was turning my family against me. She was isolating me, alienating me, making me look like the difficult one so that when she took what she wanted, no one would question it. Then came the final blow. 2 weeks after that dinner, Jake showed up at my house unannounced. I should have known something was wrong the moment I opened the door. He wasn't his usual laid-back self. No casual jokes, no brotherly small talk, no. He stood stiffly on my porch, a man on a mission, his eyes cold, his mouth set in a firm, humorless line. "Can we talk?" he asked. I folded my arms. "About what?" "About Mom's house." Everything in me froze. What about it? "Emma, you've been living here alone for 5 years," he said, carefully measured, like he was reading off a script. "Laura and I were talking, and we think it's time to discuss what's fair. Mom didn't leave the house solely to you. It's part of the family's estate. It should be shared." I stared at him, my pulse pounding. "Shared?" I repeated. "You mean you want me out?" Jake had the nerve to look offended. No, of course not, but Laura and I are starting our life together, and this house, it was our mother's. It should be a place for family, not just one person holding on to the past. My fingers dug into my arms. This wasn't real. This couldn't be happening. Mom left me this house, Jake. My voice was shaking now, not with fear, but with fury. She didn't put it in your name, he countered smoothly. And there it was, the truth, the knife in the gut. He'd done his research. He and Laura had dug through legal loopholes, found the fact that the house was still in my mother's name, and now they were coming for it. They weren't just trying to take the dress anymore. They were trying to take everything. I don't remember much of what I said after that. I remember slamming the door in Jake's face. I remember standing there, shaking, feeling the walls of my home, closing in on me. I remember the suffocating weight of betrayal crashing over me in waves. This was my brother, the same brother who used to hold my hand when we crossed the street, the same brother who taught me how to ride a bike, who defended me in schoolyard fights, and now he was standing on my doorstep, trying to push me out of my own home, because of her, because of Laura, because this woman had come into our lives, and somehow she had turned him against me so completely that he was willing to take the only piece of our mother I had left. I stood in the hallway long after he left, my heart hammering, my breaths shallow and uneven, and then something inside me snapped. If they wanted a war, they had one, because I wasn't just going to sit back and let them take everything from me. I was going to make them regret ever trying. I should have seen it coming. Laura didn't storm out of that cafe because she was upset about the dress. She left because she had a plan that I hadn't even begun to comprehend. At first, I tried to shake it off. I told myself I'd made the right decision, that it was over. I was wrong. It started subtly, whispers, side glances at family gatherings, the barely concealed pity in my aunt's voice when she called to check in on me. Then came the real blow. Jake, Emma, we need to talk. The message was short, no pleasantries, no casual brother-sister banter, just a direct order. I knew what this was about before I even met him, but I still wasn't prepared for what I walked into. We met at his apartment, a place I rarely visited. It was too sterile, too curated, like everything in it had been selected for its aesthetic rather than comfort. Laura's influence was everywhere. White orchids on the coffee table, gold accents on the bookshelves, even the scent of expensive vanilla candles wafting through the air. Jake was pacing when I arrived. That alone told me he was gearing up for something. "Glad you came," he said, though his tone was anything but warm. "Let's just get to it," I replied, arms crossed. He exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over his jaw. "Look, Laura told me what happened. She told me how you shut her down." "Yeah, because it was my choice to make." His jaw clenched. "Emma, you know how much this would mean to her. It's not just about the dress. It's about family, about including her." I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "Including her? You mean letting her take something that isn't hers? That isn't yours either?" His eyes darkened. "Mom would have wanted this." And there it was, the knife to the gut, the manipulation disguised as sentiment. I stared at him unblinking. "Mom gave that dress to me. If she had wanted Laura to have it, she would have said so." "Emma, no." I cut him off, my voice cold. "You don't get to rewrite Mom's wishes just because it's convenient for you." His mouth pressed into a thin line. "You're making this harder than it has to be," he finally said, voice taut with frustration. "Laura and I are about to start our lives together. We should be celebrating, not dealing with unnecessary drama." "Unnecessary drama?" I echoed, my pulse spiking. "You mean me standing my ground? You mean me refusing to be steamrolled?" He exhaled, shaking his head. "This isn't just about the dress, Emma." Something about the way he said it made my stomach drop. I straightened. "What does that mean?" He hesitated. Then, "the house." The world tilted. "What about it?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. Jake didn't meet my eyes. Instead, he busied himself straightening a stack of papers on the table, a nervous tic from childhood. "Laura and I were talking, and We think it would make sense for us to move in, start our family there. It's a family home after all. I didn't breathe. And what about me? He finally looked at me. Emma, you don't need all that space. It's just you. But we could build something there. There was no apology in his tone, no hesitation. This had never been about the dress. Laura didn't just want a piece of my mother's memory. She wanted all of it. The house, the history, the legacy that should have been mine. I felt the betrayal like a physical weight pressing against my ribs. So, let me get this straight, I said slowly. You want me to just leave? Hand over everything Mom left me because you and Laura decided it makes sense? We could work something out, he hedged. May we buy you out? Buy me out? I nearly laughed. Do you even hear yourself? His expression hardened. Emma, don't be difficult. This is what's best for the family. Best for the family. The phrase echoed in my head, each syllable a hammer to my chest. They weren't just trying to take my mother's dress. They were trying to erase me. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just an argument. This was war. I left without another word. But I didn't go home, not right away. I drove, mind racing, hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The betrayal, the audacity, the sheer entitlement. It all burned inside me a slow, simmering fire. I thought about my mother, about the way she had fought for everything she had, about the way she had looked at me, even in her final days, and made me promise that I would never let anyone take advantage of me. And I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to let them win. I spent the next week preparing. First, I called a lawyer. I had never looked into my legal standing with the house before. I had assumed, stupidly, that my family would never try to take it from me. But assumptions were dangerous things. What I learned only fueled my resolve. The house was in my name. My mother had ensured that before she passed. But if I had let Jake's words sink into my head, if I had agreed to any of their suggestions, I could have walked straight into a legal trap. They had been counting on my trust, counting on me to cave. Not this time. I dug deeper. I started paying attention at family gatherings. Who was siding with Jake? Who was subtly pushing the narrative that maybe it would be nice if Laura and Jake moved into the house? I found out that Laura had been telling people the house was already theirs. She had even reached out to a realtor discussing potential renovations. I clenched my jaw so hard it ached. That's when I realized this wasn't just them hoping I'd cave. This was a full-fledged plan, and I had just enough time to burn it to the ground. So I played along. I let them think I was considering their offer. I let Jake believe I was warming up to the idea of Laura wearing the dress. I smiled at family dinners, let them see what they wanted to see, a sister who was finally understanding what was best for the family. And while they basked in their victory, I made my final move. I contacted a security company, had the locks changed, installed cameras, cut off every possible way they could try to manipulate me. Then, just for good measure, I called my mother's old lawyer and had an official statement drafted. By the time Jake and Laura realized what was happening, it was too late. The battle they thought they had already won, I had just turned it into their worst nightmare. There's a moment right before a storm truly hits where the air shifts, a quiet, almost deceptive calm before the sky rips open and swallows everything whole. That was exactly how it felt standing in my mother's house, waiting. I had spent weeks playing my part, letting Jake and Laura believe they were winning. I let them think I was breaking, that I was coming around, that I was just another foolish little sister who would fold under the weight of family pressure. They had no idea I had already set everything in motion. Jake and Laura arrived at the house that afternoon, dressed in that smug assurance of people who thought they had already won. Jake didn't bother knocking. He walked in like he owned the place. Laura followed closely behind, clutching her overpriced designer bag like it contained all the answers to the universe. "Hey, Em," Jake greeted, too casual, too confident. "Jake, Laura." I nodded, my tone unreadable. Laura's eyes swept over the living room, her living room, in her mind. "You know, I was thinking," she began, her voice syrupy sweet. "Once we move in, we should probably repaint. This color is a bit outdated." She was already making plans. I didn't respond. Instead, I motioned to the dining room table. Sit. Jake frowned slightly at my tone, but he did as I asked. Laura, however, hesitated. Oh, is this like a formal thing? She laughed lightly, though there was something nervous in her eyes. Something like that, I said, sliding a folder across the table toward them. Jake reached for it first. He flipped it open, scanning the first few lines, and then his entire face changed. The cocky, older brother who always wins expression evaporated into something colder. Laura peered over his shoulder. What is it? I leaned forward slightly. It's a legal document. It outlines in detail that this house is mine and mine alone. That Mom put it in my name, not as a family home, but as my home. It also includes a statement from her lawyer confirming that I have full ownership and that any attempt to dispute it will result in legal consequences. Silence. Then Laura let out a breathy little laugh. Oh, come on, Emma. This is just a technicality. I mean, we're family. Surely we can work something out. You mean like how you worked out telling people you were already moving in? I shot back, tilting my head. Her face paled. Jake's hands tightened around the folder, his jaw clenched. You went to a lawyer? Of course I did, I said, folding my arms. Unlike some people, I don't just assume I can take things that don't belong to me. The tension in the room grew thick, heavy. Laura cleared her throat. Look, Emma, I get it. You're upset. You think we're trying to steal from you. Because you are. She ignored me, pressing on. But this is extreme. We don't have to get lawyers involved. Let's just figure out a way to share the house. Share? I repeated, letting the word linger in the air. You mean I let you move in, take over, and push me out? Laura's lips parted, but I didn't let her speak. Let me be clear, I continued, voice steady, sharp. This conversation, it's over. The house is mine. You are not moving in. You will never move in. And if you try anything, I have more than enough legal ground to sue the hell out of you both. Jake's nostrils flared, his hands curling into fists. You're serious? Very. Laura's expression shifted. Gone was the patient, sweet woman she pretended to be. The mask slipped, and I saw the anger, the frustration, the sheer entitlement. You're a selfish little bitch, you know that? She snapped. I smiled. There she is. Jake shot her a look, but she didn't care anymore. You think just because you have some paperwork, you win? Laura hissed. You think this makes you better than us? Do you know how many people think you're a bitter, pathetic girl clinging to her dead mother's stuff because she has nothing else? A flicker of pain stabbed at my chest, but I didn't let it show. I just shrugged. Well, if I'm so pathetic, then it should be easy for you to find another place to live, right? Her mouth snapped shut. She had nothing. Jake, on the other hand, was still fuming. You really don't care about this family at all, do you? No, Jake. I don't care about what you think family means, I said simply. Family doesn't lie, family doesn't manipulate, family doesn't try to steal from each other, and family sure as hell doesn't do what you two just did. He looked away, but I could see the frustration radiating off of him. You should go, I said, standing, both of you. Laura scoffed, rising from her seat. I cannot believe this. I cannot believe you're doing this to your own brother. And I can't believe you thought you could get away with this, I shot back. She turned on her heel, stalking toward the door. Jake followed, but before stepping out, he glanced back at me. I hope you're happy, Emma. I met his gaze. I am. And then they were gone. The house was quiet again. I stood there for a long moment, my fingers brushing against the table where the folder had sat just moments before. A part of me wanted to feel victorious, to revel in the fact that I had won, but another part, the part that still remembered the brother I used to have, felt something almost like grief. Almost. But grief was for things worth mourning. Jake had made his choice, and I had made mine. I walked to the front door, locked it, and exhaled. For the first time in weeks, I finally felt like I could breathe. And that was worth everything. I stood in the silence of my home, listening to the echo of the door slamming behind them. For weeks, I had been suffocating under the weight of their manipulation, their entitlement, their absolute certainty that I would roll over and give them exactly what they wanted. But not today, not ever. They were gone, and they weren't coming back. A slow breath left my chest as I ran my fingers along the edges of the table, grounding myself in the reality of what had just happened. The battle was over, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I had won. But here's the thing about people like Jake and Laura. They don't take losing well. It didn't take long for the backlash to start. Laura, ever the wounded victim, spun the story into her own twisted fairy tale. According to her, I was the villain, the cruel, heartless sister who had stolen the family home from its rightful owners. The bitter, jealous woman who denied her future sister-in-law a chance to honor her mother-in-law. The whispers started circulating through the family, the looks, the side conversations that abruptly stopped when I walked into a room. Aunt Margaret was the first to call me. "Emma, I just don't understand why you're being so stubborn about this." She sighed as if she were exhausted by the mere effort of reasoning with me. "It's just a house. It's just a dress. Is all of this really worth destroying your relationship with your brother?" I had to bite back a bitter laugh. "Did he tell you he and Laura were planning to kick me out before I even had a chance to defend myself?" I asked. Silence. "Did he tell you Laura had already spoken to realtors about remodeling? Or that she told people at the bridal boutique she finally got the dress?" More silence. And then, "Well, even if that's true, their family, Emma." That was the moment I realized something. Some people will never see the full picture. Some people will always side with the ones who cry the loudest. And Laura, she was a professional at playing the victim. But I wasn't worried, because while she was busy throwing herself a pity party, I was busy making sure that her actions had consequences. Laura didn't know that I had kept records of everything. The texts, the voicemails, the receipts from the realtor she had contacted. So when she started telling people that I was making up lies about her, that I was trying to ruin her reputation out of spite, all it took was one email, one well-placed message to the right family members attaching everything she had said and done. Suddenly the narrative changed. Suddenly, people weren't so sure that poor Laura was the innocent victim she had painted herself to be. It got worse when her lies started unraveling in public. Jake's best man, his childhood friend David, pulled him aside one night after hearing Laura's version of events. "Dude, I thought Emma was being dramatic, but she sent proof. What the hell were you thinking?" Jake tried to play it off, but Laura panicked. She started lashing out, slipping up in her web of lies, making herself look even worse, and just like that, their castle of deception crumbled. The wedding happened, of course, but it wasn't the grand, perfect event Laura had envisioned. Oh no, it was a disaster. Half the guests didn't show up, including a good chunk of our family. People whispered about her behind their hands. The air was thick with tension, and Laura knew it. She smiled for the cameras, but her eyes burned with rage. And Jake? For the first time in his life, he wasn't the golden boy. For the first time, he was the one people pitied, not admired, and he knew exactly who to blame. I didn't go to the wedding. I spent that day exactly how I wanted, sitting on my porch, sipping a glass of wine, watching the sunset over my home. And when the messages started rolling in from relatives whispering about how uncomfortable the wedding had been, how Jake looked miserable, how Laura had barely held it together, I smiled because I had won. But here's the best part. They thought the worst was over. They thought after the wedding, things would just settle, that people would forget, that time would smooth over the humiliation. They had no idea that karma wasn't finished with them yet. Because less than 6 months later, the cracks in their marriage started to show. Laura, desperate to claw back any sense of control, started pushing Jake harder. She wanted a bigger house, a better job, a new car, things he couldn't afford. And Jake? He was already drowning. Between the tension with the family, the fallout from the wedding, and the undeniable truth that Laura was not the woman he had once believed her to be, it was only a matter of time before things collapsed. And when it did, it was spectacular. Their divorce was messy. Turns out Laura had been seeing someone else, someone who actually had the money Jake couldn't give her. When the truth came out, Jake was devastated. His perfect marriage, a joke. His dream girl, a gold-digging opportunist who had played him just as much as she had tried to play me. He tried to reach out to me once, months later. I didn't answer. Because here's the thing, I'm done saving people from the consequences of their own choice. He had made his bed, now he had to lie in it. As for me, I thrived. I kept my home, I kept my mother's dress, I kept my dignity. And while Jake was struggling to rebuild his life, and Laura was off sinking her claws into her next target, I was exactly where I was meant to be, happy, free, and completely untouchable. So tell me, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have fought back? Would you have given in? Would you have let them walk all over you? Or would you have made sure they lost everything? Let me know in the comments. And to anyone out there dealing with a Laura or a Jake in their own lives, remember this: you don't have to play nice with people who are trying to destroy you.